Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Josh.
and this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things, and welcome to episode 87.
Ben, do you have any model trains?
No.
Have you ever wanted to have a model train?
My dad had a great model train set growing up, and we'd set it up for like Christmases and holidays and sometimes in between, and I loved it, but not enough that I felt so nostalgic I wanted one for myself.
Yeah, so I feel like there's two tiers of train set. There's like what you're referring to. You have a train set that comes out like the holidays, and you put it like around the tree or up on a
Yeah,
shelf somewhere,
like that.
and it does this little thing, and it's very seasonal. But then there's also like the hobby of model train, where like in somebody's garage they have dedicated like an entire carport to like a tiny little
Or their
village
entire basement is a model train set.
yes. And
I've
they
recently started watching a few YouTube channels like this. Those guys really go all out.
and you know what? Like, there's a train park in Phoenix somewhere, or in Scottsdale somewhere. We take our kids there a couple times, and they have a huge room where this hobby club gets to go in and just go like you're talking about all out, dial everything up to 11, and make the coolest giant model train sets ever. Because
Oh, yeah, and they are awesome.
and they are, and they're really cool and complex, and they put all the little servo motors to make different stuff happen with little triggers that the kids can hit, and it is really cool. And it's always been, I don't know, like conflicted in my brain. That's another one of those hobbies that's like I'll be walking with my current
in the
hobbies.
wings, waiting for
wings.
its chance to come center stage.
This one I know is a vampire, like a time and an effort vampire.
Oh yeah, and money
I believe it. Like I can
and space.
I just want to be at the end state. Like I want to do the beginning part. I want to sit down and I want to think about and design like a model train set, and then I want it to exist. I don't want to actually put in all of the time, effort, and work to get from point A to the end state there.
You want this to be a wormhole, a Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly. And so one thing that you might not know if you're not a big model train enthusiast is that they have different gauges, different scales of model train depending on what it is that you're looking for as a hobbyist. And they're just
If you want to put this thing in your basement, even just 1 or 2% difference in size when you scale it up to a full scale thing is a big difference in space.
Oh, absolutely. But also, they've standardized some of these, so that way when you go to a hobby store or when you're buying parts online or whatever, you can just say, oh, I'm looking for, this gauge or this scale model.
Right.
And so they've got scale T, which is either 1 to 480 or 1 to 450, I guess, depending on your location. They've got double Z, which is 1 to 300 scale. They got normal Z, just 1 Z, which is 1 to 220 scale. They have N, which is 160th scale. They have 2 millimeter, which is 152nd. They have TT, which is 1 to 120. They have 3 millimeter, which is 1 to 101.6. And then they have HO, which is by far the most common and the most popular scale, and that's 1 to 87.
What? Oh, awesome. I was wondering how this is going to relate to the number of the podcast.
It's all about model trains this time.
Okay, so my wife's aunt posted a single-page comic this week because she's a hobbyist where she does lots of sewing. And within any hobby, I think there's this subculture of kind of acknowledging how much time and money it costs. And there's a husband and a wife, and she's looking at a bolt of fabric, and he goes, oh, honey, you don't just need 4 feet. Go ahead and buy the whole bolt. And she looks at him out of the corner of her eye, and she says, you bought another model train this week, didn't you?
Yeah, that's how I ended up with 4 cats. I told you that story. I bought myself a bandsaw and felt kind of bad about it. And then my wife called me later that day and was like, oh, can we get this 4th cat? Yes, honey, of course. Whatever you want.
4th cat? I did not know you had 4 cats.
Oh, we don't anymore. One of them died like 6 months to a year ago, somewhere in that frame.
Aw.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. What a downer.
Okay, I didn't know this, and I have to hit pause on this for a while because when I was when I was a kid, we had pets, but because my dad got in the military and moved around a lot, I was never the owner of a pet when it died. But you have young children with pets. So did you guys go through the talking to your children about death thing?
A little bit, yeah. This cat was old. Like I got this cat in my apartment when my wife and I first got together and we were dating. Like after we had dated for a little while, I told her, listen, I want a cat and I can't just be a single guy with a cat unless I'm with someone when I get the cat. Because if we break up, then I'm a single guy with a cat, which is weird. But then I can say, oh, well, me and my last girlfriend got this cat together, and she broke up and didn't want it, so now I have a cat.
I think you made that a lot harder than it needed to be.
Absolutely.
Josh, honestly, it has become okay to be a single guy with a cat.
Well, maybe now, but not 20 years ago when I was in the dating pool.
Okay. I don't know that either, but okay.
Anyway, so that was the excuse I used to buy a cat. And then like a month later, we felt so bad because he was alone by himself in our apartment all day while we were at work that we got a second cat to be his cat. And so anyway, our first cat, he got old and like he had bad arthritis and couldn't hardly move around the house, and then started having like bathroom problems everywhere. It was a huge issue. And so finally we took him to the vet and just had him put down, and it was rough. This was like the first time where, like, I was, as a kid, we had pets and we had pets that died, but I was never the person that had to deal with it. Yeah. It was always my parents, like, abstracting that away. Like, oh,
when you say deal with it, you mean like actually
like
dealing with it.
Like pick him up and like put him in the carrier and like sit with him in the vet's office for the last, few minutes of his life. Yeah, it was emotionally trying time, not just for me, for like the whole family.
Were you just straightforward with the kids about what was going on?
Nicole did most of that stuff, talking to the kids about it, and we prepared it. We didn't sugarcoat it. We're like, he's old and he's sick and he's in pain, and we're gonna go, have him put to sleep, which means he's gonna go to sleep and never wake up. And it was rough on the kids, but they both did like we had them pick out their favorite pictures that they had with that cat and got them printed so they can hang up in their rooms. And then my daughter got a stuffy of a cat that looks just like him. And she still, like, every once in a while will be like, oh, I'm sad that Jack is gone. And just, like, say something like that. And we'll be like, yeah, us too. But it's a whole process. And as bad as this sounds, it is a safer way to introduce children to the concept of death and finality if it's a pet than a person.
Yeah. So at some point you had 4, but now you're back to 3?
Yeah, we're down to 3, and there are no plans to go back up to 4. 4 was far too many cats.
Yeah. Okay. What are the other 3's names?
Lily, Finn, and Chase.
Jack, Lily, Finn, and Chase. Have you ever managed to get them all in the same place for a photo?
I don't know. So the 2 new ones, Finn and Chase, came along just a few years ago. And so they were separated from our older cats by like a decade. And so our older cats really wanted to have nothing to do with them. But the younger cats are just like all over the older cats because they're kids and they don't know any better.
Right.
So I don't know if we have pictures of them all together. We probably do somewhere, but they did like to pair off. We have lots of pictures of Jack and Lily together and lots of pictures of Chase and Finn together.
Okay. Well, I don't have any cats, but I know some of our listeners are cat lovers. So if you got any photos, we'll share them up on the photo album that we put up with each episode on our Facebook page.
Well, they say that there's 2 types of people. There's cat lovers, and then there's everybody that's wrong.
Well, speaking of being wrong, Josh, we need to follow up on the saga surrounding the Magic 30th Anniversary Edition cards. Have you been following this? I keep thinking this is going to fade into the background, and it keeps popping back up again.
So we're talking about the mystery or the booster packs that they were selling, 4 packs for $1,000 of randomized, not tournament legal cards from Alpha.
Beta. But yeah.
Oh, beta.
So the thing about this is, and why we kind of stopped talking about it, was we thought it was all going to... Okay, what happened since the last time we recorded Bad at Magic was it actually went live for public release.
Well, I mean, this has been an ongoing saga, and I've seen multiple things even before the release. One of the things that I saw that I thought was hilarious was Wizards, the manufacturer of these cards, got in kind of a debacle because it became known that they were hiring streamers and Twitch people, like people in other gaming communities.
Influencers in other gaming communities.
Yes, like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh card players. They were paying them to create content for this product because every Magic influencer that they tried to hire turned them down because the product was so toxic it was going to lead to less views. And like a couple of like the Yu-Gi-Oh streamers pulled their videos down and then reposted a video apologizing for even interacting with Wizards about this product. It's so toxic.
Yeah, so one thing I'd seen and kind of the involvement that I'd had with it is they'd use the opportunity of the Magic 30 that you and I went to in Las Vegas to get just a little bit of word on the street about these things, and they'd given a few packs out to the people who'd paid for the highest level of VIP treatment at the event, which was not you or I, but as you know, I have 2 packs sitting right here on my desk that ended up in our possession because my son participated in the cosplay contest, and they surprised him by giving him these 2 packs backstage. We have these packs here, and a lot of the people that had procured them at that event, the public release date, the date you could actually purchase them, hadn't come yet. And I think they were trying to build a little bit of, guerrilla marketing, groundswell kind of hype behind the scenes, and they were handing these things out at this event, knowing that the people that were at this event would do things like open the packs on a live stream or create a YouTube video or something like that, and people come and get excited about it. So one YouTuber, and I'll put a link to his video, did something interesting in that he kind of got swept up in that intent and opened the 4 packs that he'd been given at that event on stream and got a few cards that maybe or maybe not were valuable. And then he posted a later video and kind of says, I regret that I got swept up in this. And I think that this isn't a good product. I don't think it's good for the community. I don't think it's good for the game. And as he's starting to lay out his case, he picks up one of his cards and he tears it in 4 pieces.
Oh, geez.
And then he goes on talking and rips every single one of the cards that he'd opened from these 4 packs, worth $17 a piece, into 4 pieces.
Yeah, well, that video is going to be worth more than he was, he didn't pay for those cards. He was given those cards.
And that's so if you look at the comment thread on this guy's video where he tore up his entire, 60 booster cards worth $17 a piece into 4 pieces, you could see that everyone interpreted it in the spirit that it was done as like an act of solidarity with the Magic community over these cards.
That actually reminds me of something else that happened in a different game. Do you mind if we go on a tangent for just a minute?
No, go ahead.
All right. Have you heard of Flesh and Blood?
Yes.
Okay, so Flesh and Blood is a card game that is being made by people that loved Magic but didn't like the direction the game was going, and they spun off and they wanted to make like a game that was as in-depth and complex as Magic but focused purely on like tournament play. Like it's all about in-person and playing at events for real prizes. And one of the tent poles that they're using to stand up this game is that they have like this specific event at this place at this time. The top 100 winners or whatever at the tournament are going to receive this card that is completely exclusive to this event at this time. And if you don't win one, that's the only way that you can get it. They're not going to reprint it. They're not going to sell it. That's the only way to get one of these things, right? And so there was one that they did very early on that turned out to be like really, really good, very powerful for however the game plays, right? And I can't remember the name of the card right now, but you could only get it if you attended a specific event at a specific time. And they overprinted it because they wanted to make sure they had enough to give out to the people that showed up to this event. They gave out all of these cards to the people that showed up. And there's this YouTube video where they're taking the bulk of these cards that they printed that weren't handed out, and they watch one of the employees feeding them into an industrial shredder.
Wow.
And what's crazy about this is, one, like while they're doing it, there's a voiceover of like the CEO and the guy that designed this game. Like, we are serious about our dedication. Like when we say the only way to get it is to do this thing, we mean it, one. But two, there was kind of a backlash because at the time of filming, each one of those cards was worth like $40 or $50. And they shredded something like almost $1 million in product on camera just to stick to their guns.
Wow. Okay. Link in the show notes. All right, we're going to go one level deeper on this rabbit trail. So you might be familiar with, we've talked about how when producers of intellectual property are trying to push their products, sometimes they will rush a video game to market that isn't good because they're trying to strike while the iron is hot and release a new game at the same time that a new movie comes out or something like that.
Ugh, yeah.
This is not a new concept. Maybe the first and most notorious time that this happened was way back in the 80s. Are you familiar with this story?
Are you talking about E.T., the video game?
Yes. So back at the time, before even the Nintendo Entertainment System, there was only the Atari 2600 at the time. And as this new movie about an alien coming to Earth was going to be a big box office smash over the summer, they were in a rush to produce a video game and get it to market. So they released E.T., the extraterrestrial, for the Atari 2600, and it was a clunker.
It was bad. It was unplayable. It made no sense. People didn't know what the objective of the game was.
There was bugs. There was problems. It was horrible.
People that play it said that there wasn't really any gameplay. They weren't sure what they were doing.
So what happened was they recognized this and they didn't want to take all the bad press that comes with it. So they gathered together all the cartridges that they produced that hadn't been sold, and they went and dumped them in a landfill and buried them.
Yes. They
this
pretended like it never happened.
This event has become the stuff of legends. So much so that James, I can't remember his last name, he has a YouTube channel called The Angry Video Game Nerd. Produces lots of content where he goes back and plays old video games and gets angry about them and drinks Rolling Rock beer. Anyway, he made a feature-length film about going out in search of E.T., the E.T. game cartridges.
Looking for
desert.
Atari cartridges.
Yes.
That's
yes.
hilarious.
So, yeah, there's these kinds of things swirl around. But back to Magic 30th Anniversary Edition, there's the conflict here. And again, if you can put aside the pronouns that I use here, I have these cards sitting on my desk unopened. I recognize kind of the thorn in the side of the goodwill of the Magic community that they represent. But I also feel like that's not our fault. Like, am I obligated to throw these away or tear them up or never use them?
No. And this is the problem, though, is because those are worth something. Because those packs sold for $1,000 for a bundle of 4, and you have 2 of them, inevitably they, regardless of what people feel about it, it's still going to be a collector's item. There is still real monetary value in those packs.
Yeah. So here's the weird thing. When it went, I don't know if you were tracking this, but when it went, yeah, I think you were because I texted you about it. When it went live last week, the website opened up, and within a half hour to an hour, Wizards of the Coast had closed down the sale and given a vague cryptic message about that they're no longer for sale.
Yeah, that's the thing, is usually when they sell out of a product, because this is not the first limited print run that they do, where we have a finite amount of these things and they're going on sale at this time. Typically, the verbiage that they've used in the past is, it is sold out. They didn't say that. They said this product is no longer for sale. And so people are taking that word choice as, does that mean that it's sold out, or does that mean that they stopped selling it to try to end the backlash and sweep this whole thing under the rug?
So the evidence is pretty compelling that during this 1 hour time period, all 3 stores, the Asian store, the European store, and the American store, all closed down at the same time. What's the likelihood that all 3 stores sold out simultaneously?
If you're talking about an online store, I mean,
they did this. They did this historically and showed past sellings of things like this that had sold out, and they never sell out at the same time. So that's one bit of evidence. The verbiage he used is another bit of evidence. The rapidity which it happened is another bit of evidence. You put all that together, and it looks like it wasn't selling, and they decided to call it off. So I don't know if there's an industrial shredder somewhere they're going to feed these things into. But if that's the case, then that makes the value of these 2 packs on my desk go up a lot more.
Maybe. You're talking strictly scarcity. But if nobody wants it, if it wasn't selling originally, like, the scarcity, yes, does create value, but only if people want it. Like, just because those are scarce, if nobody wants a piece of the product or if nobody's willing to invest in it, then they're not worth anything.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. But that's the thing. It's like the E.T. the Extraterrestrial cartridge. Like, it was a sucky game, but because no one could have it, it became a collector's item, again, in spite of itself.
Well, it became a collector's item decades after the fact. Once the story came out and people started realizing how rare this thing was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe. All right, so here's one of 2 scenarios. One, we never hear about this product again. And like the secondary market aside, whatever happens, it happens. Or the second thing is, like, Wizards will just start putting these into promo things around the country.
Yeah, they've done that in the past, where they just have the cards and they start sticking them into other stuff.
Which is what they should have done in the first place. If you wanted Magic 30th edition to be a celebration of Magic, then they should be like an entry, like, award for showing up to an in-person event that they're trying to kick back off.
Yeah. This goes against the things that they've said. In fact, Mark Rosewater, once in the past, he talked about a mistake that they made during the original Kamigawa block. And that was a samurai-themed set where everyone was, like, legendary. So there were lots of legendary cards. But typically in the past, legendary cards had always been rare. And so a lot of the themes and stories in this set were in the rare slot. But the thing about that is when you open a pack of Magic cards, you only have 1 rare card in the pack. And so the incidence with which a regular collector who maybe only opens 10 packs would see your thing that was supposedly the theme of your set was very low. And they came out with a new design maximum following that incident where that set was unpopular, it didn't sell well, people didn't get it. He said, unless your theme is at common, it's not your theme.
Oh, that's actually a really good point. Like if you actually want to get the point of the set across, or like the story that you're trying to tell, it needs to be accessible to everyone immediately.
Right. And I feel like that's kind of what the community is saying to Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro by proxy is, if you want to do something to celebrate this game we all play, then it needs to be for everyone.
This is also really bad timing.
Not just the whales.
Yeah. And if we're talking about this, it also comes at a really bad time because there was a financial report. Like the Bank of America downgraded the stock of Hasbro, which owns Wizards of the Coast, from like A+ or whatever to like meh, because somebody did a study, and they're studying air quotes because who knows how much research this person actually did. But the person for Bank of America was researching Hasbro, found their golden goose was Magic the Gathering, and started talking to Magic the Gathering players and realized that there's real product fatigue. And they forecast like the downslide of this game because of all of these decisions, these corporate level decisions that the company is making.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was right in the middle of this. Oh, by the way, we have a ridiculously overpriced product that's coming out that everybody hates.
Yeah, and they were trying to get all the social media influencers to push. Okay, we can move on from that. You and I had talked about Risk, and reflecting upon this from the last episode, you want to talk about playgrounds. I like this idea. Let's talk about playgrounds.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of background. During Thanksgiving holiday, I had a bunch of my in-laws come out, and some of them stayed with us. My sister-in-law, her husband, and their 2 young boys stayed with us for a whole week. And so, without the holiday, you've got to pad out activities. As a good host, you got to go be like doing stuff, right?
Agreed. We did the same thing over Thanksgiving.
Okay, so one of the things that we did is I took my young nephews, the whole family. Everybody went out to, we have a nice, really big, like high budget playground in our community. And we went out to play on this playground. And I was sitting there with my wife observing the children that were playing. And I was observing the kinds of like playground equipment that were there and the things that the kids were doing. And I said out loud, you know what? A good playground, or the perfect playground, is not a playground with 0 injuries. And like I started breaking it down. Like I think we have to break this down by injuries per hour.
I like this. Because what is a playground but not introducing a little bit of danger into your otherwise mundane life?
Well, and that's the thing. That's part of the fun. It's got to be a little dangerous, right? And so, for example,
that's what gives you the feeling of play.
Yeah. I remember crawling up when I was a kid on like 30-foot tall structures that had like minimum railing to make sure you didn't fall out. This playground has
slick stainless steel slides, teeter-totters, merry-go-rounds, just the lethal stuff.
So this playground is awesome because it has 3-storied structures in the playground. But like even at the ground level, the bars are like 4 feet tall and vertically, and there's vertical bars between them, and those bars are no more than like an inch apart. There is no chance that anyone is ever going to fall out.
Okay, so it's the illusion of danger.
Yeah, it's basically a cage. There's no chance that you're falling out from 30 feet high or whatever. And then they've got the big tunnel slides that are plastic at like no more than whatever the safety degree angle is or whatever.
Right, but when you're a kid and you climb up to the top level and peer out through the bars, you feel like you've done something dangerous.
Oh yeah, you feel like you're at the top of Mount Everest, like spitting off a cliff or whatever. But they also have 2 spinny rides, and I want to talk about those for a second.
Okay.
There's one merry-go-round that's like a new style merry-go-round design. I look at it and I feel like this is an engineer that wanted a merry-go-round on this park and is trying to figure out a safe way to do it. Because it's built in a way that you can sit on it in one of 2 ways. Either you sit on it and it's like a curved surface. Like imagine like a cone shape, and that's what this is, with like the bottom flaring out away from the center. And
okay, I've seen one of these before. They had one at our park in England.
Okay, perfect. And it's got molded seats where your kid will like sit down and like they can put their feet into like feet rests and give them like really solid footing against the centripetal force.
Okay.
But then there's also, like, in between those seats, there's a little spot where you can put your feet and then reach up facing towards the center of rotation, and you can grab these handlebars. And so that's for like the older kids, I guess, where you're like standing and your only 2 points of contact are the bottom of your feet and then your hands holding on in the middle.
Right. So you got the like ultra safe option, and then you got the slightly more dangerous option.
Yes. And interestingly enough, this merry-go-round does not have a limiter. So some of them I've also seen where once they get up to a certain speed, like the way that they build the bearings, it'll start wobbling or shaking to like slow it down. Like you can't spin it faster than that. This one doesn't have that. Like if you can get it going, it'll just go.
That's annoying. I remember in the transition period where you felt like you'd gotten away with something when you could find a playground that still had old, unsafe equipment that was actually fun.
Well, this one didn't have that, and it's still kind of unsafe, but I guess that's just being accepted. And they've got like the big, thick rubber padding all the way around it or whatever. But there was at least 3 children that were quote-unquote hurt off of that thing because it's usually not the kids. It's the kids will get on it and spin themselves barely any faster than just walking around in a circle. But it's when the dad comes over and it's like, "Oh, do you guys want to go faster?"
For him.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got
somebody's
bodies
tooth
flying
gets
off
knocked
like
out.
ragdolls. Yeah,
Kids are flying everywhere.
Yes, and it's always fun to see one kid fall off and start crying, and then one parent come over with the dad that, like, clearly this kid doesn't belong to the dad who abashedly had been spinning it way too fast. That was one. All right, the other merry-go-round ride that they had was, I've never seen it anywhere else, and I love it to death. I love it so much, Ben, that I couldn't stop playing on this stupid thing. My son would give me the tiniest excuse, and I would get back up on this
what's
thing.
the name of this park you were at? This sounds really good.
This is the Anthem Park. I don't know. I'll see if I can find some photos of it, and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So, notoriously, years ago, the first time I was at that park, after they remodeled it, my dad and I ended up on the community Facebook page by some random person that took our picture while we were on this merry-go-round. And we're like, would you look at these 2 grown adults like doing all the terrible things at the playground that they're not supposed to be doing? That's how fun this thing was.
Wow.
So it's this, imagine a pole, okay? It's just a pole that's like 8 feet in the air. And then right at the very top, it kicks over at maybe a 10-degree angle. So there's a slight angle to it, okay?
Okay.
And then at the top of this pole is mounted a giant ring. And
I've seen it.
It's like 10
It's tilted so that it's kind of low on one side and high on the other.
Yes, and the idea is that it spins freely, and you grab it on the outside. It's this big ring. And the idea is this: if you pull your feet off the ground, if you're on the high side, gravity will pull you to the low side. But if you can kick your feet as you're coming around the other side, you can get the energy to swing back up all the way around to the top and then start coming around the other side again.
Yes. Well, this one's also kind of interesting in that it filters out the little kids.
Yes, little kids, you have to have the upper body strength.
They can't reach it. You got to be a certain height.
Exactly. But at the same time, it's probably not made for me as a grown man. It's on a little kid playground. I'm not supposed to be on there. But I'll tell you what, Ben, my son's like, how do you use that? Oh, let me show you. And I jumped up and ran over there with my wife telling me, no, Josh, don't. Doing the thing that she's supposed to do. All right. So what you do is you hold on here at the high side. You come down, and I did it, right? So I pull my feet off the ground. I fall down. I start kicking, and I'm doing orbits around this thing. The problem is then like other kids ran over and like jumped onto the other side that I wasn't on.
Uh-huh.
But my weight is enough to counteract the fact that they don't know what's happening or how to do this. And so then like I'm just going around, and these kids are like just holding on for their dear life.
Right.
And it was so fun.
Because it's medium danger.
It's me. This is more. So this goes back to me discussing with my wife about what the perfect playground is. And based on my observation, I'm thinking the sweet spot is 1 to 3 injuries per hour is like a good playground. It's like this playground is safe, but it's not too safe.
That's not going to get it shut down.
Yeah, people aren't going to break bones or die here, but there's enough danger that it's fun. And also, like, kids got to learn. Like, there is crap that you're going to experience that is dangerous, and you need to approach it with caution.
Yeah, and you and I have both been to one of the playgrounds where they've tried to take all of the danger out. The swings are those like diaper-looking things that that you get stuck in, and they've reduced the height of them so that they only have an arc of like 4 feet. Everything's a single level. The slides are all tubes that barely even have a descent. There's bars and everything. There's nowhere to hang. It's just slow and low.
every parent that's listening to us talk about this, they know what this playground is. It's the little kid playground. It's the playground for the kid that can barely walk, for 2 and 3 year olds, and that's it. After that, it's boring for those kids. And the kids don't know why it's boring. Like, this is a playground that's supposed to be fun. They can't articulate why it's boring, but you and I can. It's boring because it's safe.
So when you told me you wanted to talk about this, I did a bit of research on it.
Okay.
And I was kind of wondering, like, all right, so we've seen this happen in our lifetimes where playgrounds went from really dangerous to only sort of dangerous to maybe even not dangerous at all. I mean, like, my elementary school playground had those giant stainless steel slides that were like 20 feet up in the air, had no things on the sides, and it was over asphalt blacktop.
Yeah, because kids are supposed to be durable, supposed to be rugged.
And we had teeter-totters and merry-go-rounds and all those kind of things that really, looking back on them, I think, yeah, that was really kind of dangerous. In fact, really dangerous, which is probably why...
Yeah, that's why it went away. But I would remember in elementary school, we had swings that were where the top of the swings was like 15 feet in the air. And so that had a huge swinging arc, right?
Uh-huh.
And I would always, like, my friends would swing, and they'd get as high as they could doing the normal swing, and then I would stand behind them, and they would be coming on their way back, and I would jump up with them, grab the bottom of the seat, and then use my weight as we were coming down to throw them so that they could go even higher on the other side.
Yeah, and do you remember what you call it when you would run through with them as they were going through the bottom of the arc?
I don't remember what we called it.
It's an underdog.
Oh, yes, the underdog.
Give me an underdog. So, yeah, so we grew up with all of that. Now, the thing you got to realize as you're thinking about this is as kids who saw that those were there when we were kids and our kids have them now, it feels like they've always been there. But how long, Josh, do you think playgrounds like that existed? Some type of central place, maybe near the center of the city or close to where people live, where you can go and there's organized play equipment that children can play on.
This is based on apropos nothing.
Right.
But it's got to be 1950, 1960s when that stuff started popping up?
Yeah, actually about 50 years before that.
No kidding.
But no farther.
Really? So like in the turn of the century?
Yes. I looked back, and in 1906, the Playground Association of America was incorporated. So apparently, the development of society had happened to a point where they'd started to create group places where people could gather and children could do dangerous things together in an organized way. And somebody said, hey, maybe we should figure this out and make some standards or come to some kind of agreement of what's acceptable.
Ben, this is clicking with other things in my head. That's about... this is, again, no research done, but I feel like that's about the time that child labor laws started really coming into effect.
It might be.
So is it like kids
they're no longer part of the workforce?
Yeah, if kids aren't at their job doing dangerous crap, maybe we need like other places for kids to encounter danger.
I think you're probably right. Because I just read a book about this, of
course,
and it was talking about the transformation of children from being an economic asset and part of the workforce to now being this cherished chore that we do almost as a rite of passage as adults to carry on our DNA into the next generation. So, yeah, this didn't exist, and the group stood up and they started organizing. We gave names to these things and kind of created this idea that stood and grew and evolved over our lifetimes until it's become what it is today.
Well, this is blowing my mind because think about that. If you were an adult at the time that child labor laws came into effect and like your kid can no longer work, it's like you send your kid to a playground and you're there and you're grumpy. Like that playground could have been like broken glass and like steel rods. And you've been like, oh, this is ridiculous. When I was their age, I was working at the pickling plant with toxic chemicals all day. And then fast forward another generation where we have actual like good playground equipment. We're like, oh, this crap is ridiculously too safe. I used to play in the broken glass and the steel rods. And it's just this constant progression of downgrading the danger.
Yeah, I guess so. And we can't pretend like that's a non-thing. Like the level of child mortality has dropped precipitously since that time.
So while we complain that playgrounds are now too safe, there are also fewer people dying on said playgrounds. So right. I guess that's a win.
Well, and the thing I read about this as I was reading about the incorporation of a playground association was before that, kids just used to go outside and play. There wasn't a designated place for them to go where you could centrally have them and monitor them and know where they're going to be. They were just out in the woods, throwing rocks at each other or climbing trees.
They're, crossing the elevated train bridge when the train was coming, stuff like that.
Right, stuff like that, looking for dead bodies that they heard about. Yeah. All right, well, weigh in if you have some opinions on the state of playgrounds today. All my favorite videos of kids playing at playgrounds are in Eastern Bloc Soviet countries that former Soviet countries that have yet to incorporate and make their playgrounds safe.
Yeah, I saw one where some old playground, they found one of those unregulated old school merry-go-rounds, and they put a bunch of teenagers on it, and then they wrapped a rope around the base of it and tied it to a truck. About. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen like a ragdoll fly away from a merry-go-round faster than that. Like, people could have died.
Very dangerous. Maybe someone did.
Well, that's a question. I actually put this in the notes. We didn't talk about it. But, like, what are the most dangerous forces that exist at a playground?
Okay, so obviously falling from someplace high.
So I listed 3, and gravity is on there. Yeah, so gravity is one of the dangerous
spinning
forces.
Around really fast.
Centrifugal force is my number 1 cause of injury.
And I guess if you're like on a swing and a kid runs out in front of another kid and they crash into them.
Dude, sudden deceleration. Those are the 3 that I put in the notes. Good job.
Okay. Yeah, those are the dangers. That's going to lose you, broken bones, stitches, broken teeth. Yeah.
Yes. Gravity, centrifugal force, and sudden deceleration.
Internal organ damage.
It's fine. Walk it off. Rub some dirt on it.
All right, Josh, I want to follow up on something I mentioned to you a little while ago, and that is I'd recently kind of made a decision for various personal reasons I don't need to go into to start growing a beard, which is under most circumstances strictly prohibited for an active duty member of the armed forces. However, when I was in basic training, I went and got a medical evaluation of my skin, and the doctor diagnosed me with a condition called pseudofolliculitis barbae that just means that when I shave down to the skin level, I get ingrown hairs and it can cause permanent disfigurement to my face, so I'm allowed to grow my hair out a little bit longer. However, also at that time, my preferred hairstyle was to shave my head, which didn't have that problem at all. So it would have looked weird if I'd kept my head shaved and had a beard. So I always kind of just kept my face hair cut a little bit shorter, even if not all the way shaved down to the level of my head.
And now let's be absolutely clear about this. While you could probably get away with that as a junior enlisted person, if you were an officer in the Air Force and like really expected to have any kind of career, there is absolutely no chance that you can get away with having any sort of facial hair, even if you have a shaving waiver.
Okay, that's a good point. Let's go deeper on that. And that is the joke that you like to make on this podcast when I'm thinking about a thing that formerly I might not have considered because it would make me less competitive for promotion or jobs that I want or positive attention that they give officers. You say, and I quote you all the time on this, what are they going to do? Move you to Louisiana and force you to retire?
Yeah, so exactly. You're making my point for me. You, at some level, knew that you, yes, technically could grow a beard, but you knew that you were not allowed to actually grow a beard if you wanted to have any sort of career. So it makes sense that now that your career is on its downhill slope,
yes,
that you would go ahead and just say, you know what? Screw the man. I've got the paper. It's fine.
So at some point, this paper basically says I can maintain a beard by trimming it to no longer than 1/4 of an inch with trimmers as opposed to shaving it down to skin level, which is fine. It allows me to control the medical condition. It would be the same as if, what are some other... So as part of our physical fitness program, we're required to do running or push-ups, but if you had arthritis in your knees and running aggravated the arthritis, a doctor would write you a note and you wouldn't have to run. And then if you tested for fitness, you would do push-ups and sit-ups, but not running, and they would determine your fitness based on those two things.
And I absolutely have to stop you there again because, yes, this technically exists in the bureaucracy. If you have a medical waiver for a specific thing, you don't have to do that in the PT test. However, I have been in units and I have been privy to discussions where people are talking about, we can't promote this guy, or we can't put this guy forward, or we can't give special recognition to this guy because he doesn't run the PT test. And it's always made it's like he has a waiver. He doesn't have to run the PT test. You are punishing him for a medical condition that a doctor said is legit. And they go, oh, well, he just went to the doctor and got a waiver. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's not like he broke his own ankle. A doctor, a medical professional said this. Why are you punishing him for that?
Yes. Now, in the grand scheme of this, it really gets to the fundamental thing of what is a soldier, what is a sailor, what is an airman, and that is that the government is paying you to be here as part of a cog in this machine that makes violence, and you need to be able to do a certain minimum level of thing. And if you can't do that minimum level of thing, then maybe you should find other work. Now, what you're talking about is the culture not accommodating the strategy. And the strategy is we'll give him a medical waiver for a certain period of time, see if he heals, gets back to the level that we need him to be, and then he can be the cog in the machine still, instead of us having to go to the expense and trouble to go find a new cog.
Well, I guess the bureaucracy and the rules allow him to do this because he has a sustained injury or because he has a medical condition. But then the culture, like the way people think and the people that are in leadership, like because he has this condition, well, he doesn't exemplify the things that we want, and so we are going to actively punish him for it.
So let's do some imaginary stories here. So for something like arthritis of your knees, you can see how that would be a problem. Like if I need you to go over to someplace we're fighting a war and carry things and move things and do the kinds of actions that we need in order to prosecute that war, it's going to be a problem that your knees aren't working well.
Yes, but that's a straw man because the way the deployments work in the Air Force is they're almost entirely voluntary.
Well, yes, but any force, you hope that you're not actively at war all the time, but you have to be ready to go to war at a moment's notice.
Well,
that's the point of maintaining a military.
The physical requirements are more stringent for people in physical jobs. The people I'm talking about were sensor operators. Like even if he was deployed, the most he would be called to do is sit in a chair and work a joystick 8 hours a day.
Right, but our system doesn't allow for that. Okay, think of the opening scene of the movie Iron Man, where he goes over to the desert and he's in a Humvee full of airmen, and they take fire from the left hand side, and then they all jump out the left hand side and get wasted. Like this idea that you could have people that are unprepared because they think that their job's just a desk job and they don't actually have to fight is cute. But Josh, everybody has to be ready to fight.
Ben, like you're towing the party line really hard for a guy that has a beard right now.
I know. Well, that's where I was trying to lead to this. I think it's really easy to see plausible scenarios that even if you do the kind of work that's knowledge work primarily, there is potential that you might need to actually be that cog in the machine and do the tasks that require the full measure of what the requirement defines.
All right, Ben. So then the service draws a line. There is a certain point at which, like even with medical conditions, you are no longer fit to serve. We're not talking about those people. We're talking about the people that are still on this side of the line where, yeah, you're still fit to serve. We're going to accommodate you medically until you get fixed or whatever. Maintain a healthy diet or like stay in pseudo shape. You just can't do the run.
And that's what can happen. Like if you go too long and without getting better while you're on this medical status, they'll discharge you.
Which is also a bureaucratic process. And yes, exactly.
So, but there is no discharge process that goes along with a medical accommodation for pseudofolliculitis barbae, because what they're waiving you against isn't the physical job requirement of your ability to do your job. What is the waiver for?
The waiver is for disfigurement, right? Essentially, it's to make sure that because we have a rule that says you have to shave, doesn't mean you have to necessarily scar your face.
It's like a good order and discipline waiver. Like everybody else has to look like this, but we're going to let you get away with not doing it.
Well, now you're bringing up like, why do we shave in the first place? Why do we have short hair in the first place?
That's where I'm going with this.
Ben, it's for lice. It's for World War II era BS about we're going to shove a bunch of dudes off the street in a room together. We don't want them to get lice.
So I'd kind of been doing this on the down low. I keep my beard trimmed pretty short, and I'm not getting into anybody's face about it. But we had an event coming up where that was optional, but I decided to go where it was like breakfast with our general. I've talked about him several times on the podcast. I like the guy. So I went to it, and I was about 10 minutes early. And as I was walking in, I was with a friend of mine, a fellow major, and I says, the general's probably going to be in there, and he hasn't seen me yet with a beard, and he's going to want to know. He's going to go, nah, he'll let you alone. I said, no, he'll immediately ask me what's going on. We walked through the door. He was the only person standing there. He looks at me, and he goes, what's with the beard?
This is one of those old school guys that just like has no room for anything deviating from his perfect little like order.
Right. So I prepared an answer for this. I said, sir, I've got to get the attention of the promotion board somehow.
Oh, that's a good snarky comeback. I like that.
And he goes, no, really, what's with the beard?
Shut up, Major Rich, and give me the actual skinny.
And I said, sir, I've been on a profile since basic training. And he was instantly mollified. Like, wasn't going to pursue it any farther, didn't even say anything about it. In fact, he got a wistful look in his eye, and he kind of looked off into the middle distance, and he said, I wish I could grow a beard.
That was it? That was like your big...
That was the end of it.
Confrontation. Wow. Okay. Hey, what's the worst confrontation that you've had so far because of the beard?
I've had a few people kind of rail by proxy in my presence, unrestrained, against even the idea that a medical waiver for shaving exists.
Okay, right there. That's what I was talking about earlier. That is, there is a culture where if there is a medical waiver and you take advantage of the situation to like accommodate you because of whatever, it doesn't matter what the illness or the ailment is. Like just the process of like the fact that you went and did that makes you lesser in certain people's eyes.
Yes.
And that's ridiculous.
And they've done that in my presence. But they're people that are willing to do that in front of me because either I've shown myself to be a safe person or they also recognize that they don't have any influence over it or me. But
like how do you not like immediately like and venomously attack this small-minded notion in their heads? Like some people really do need help and some people really do have medical problems. Why would you go out of your way to make them feel bad for trying to get help?
So the way I'm able to compartmentalize that is I recognize that they're not attacking me personally. They're just attacking the policy, and that I give them the excuse whether or not it was intended that way, that they're not attacking me personally. And so I just move on.
Ben, if they're willing to say that crap in your presence, what are they willing to do outside of your presence against you? What are some of the decisions that they are making because of their now preconceived notions about you?
I've said this on the podcast before, and I believe it deeply, and that is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if the strategy is, hey, we need a healthy force that can accommodate lots of diverse kinds of things that could happen in people's life. Like, for instance, the incident of pseudofolliculitis barbae is higher among people of different races where they would have more likely to have coarse, curly hair on their face that could potentially, cause ingrown hairs and stuff like that. So I'm kind of falling under that umbrella. But as we've adjusted our hairstyles and our uniform accommodations and our physical appearance accommodations to be more diverse, there has been a resistance to it. I don't think it's just like cultural inertia. People just don't like change. This isn't like it used to be. I don't like it anymore.
I will say this right now that I have seen in the civilian sector, like the small amount of it that I've experienced, I do very much more appreciate that there is a lot less of this like based on appearance nonsense that the military had. The military overly promotes above average height white men that are in good shape. Like, and that's just hands down across the board. And it's because they fit the stereotype. That's what everybody pictures when they think of like, freaking Captain America.
It's cyclical too. The guys that want to be the one in charge try to look like that.
Yes, and we should value people for what they bring to the table, not what they look like.
Yeah. Well, Gladwell did a great chapter, I think, in his book Blink, where he talked about how orchestras used to believe that women couldn't make as good of a sound out of their musical instruments as men, and so they would frequently, if they even allowed them to audition at all, they'd fail them out of auditions. And then they instituted blind auditions, where the person auditioning would come out behind a curtain and play their instrument behind a curtain. And as much of these people that thought that women couldn't play their instruments as good as men would just rate them without ever having seen them, and then orchestras became gender equal.
This is pervasive throughout our society. They do things like mock trials where they have like identical circumstances, identical facts and evidence, identical testimonies. But if the defendant is a young white woman versus an older black man, the decisions that these fake juries make are skewed one way or the other.
Wow, I haven't heard of that.
Oh, I'll see if I can find the study and send it to you. Yeah, racial profiling is so ingrained into our society. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I don't know if these cultural ideas we're talking about in the military are necessarily grounded in those kinds of ideas, or if they're just another version of it. I have the idea of what I consider the ideal military person to be, and you don't look like it, so you shouldn't be promoted, you shouldn't be honored, you shouldn't be favored.
I'm a pessimist, and I feel like it's more petty than that. I think people look at you and they see the beard and they're like, oh, I'm not allowed to grow a beard. Why is he allowed to grow a beard? That's ridiculous. I have to run the 1.5 miles. Why doesn't that guy have to run the 1.5 miles? That's ridiculous. I think it really comes down to that.
Yeah, again, I kind of want to resist comparing the physical fitness standards to the dress and appearance standards, but I get why you lump them together.
Well, it's any exception to any policy.
Not necessarily. I mean, there really are plausible scenarios where health and loss of life could come into the equation in the physical fitness realm, but not the dress and appearance realm.
That just sounds like you're on the side of the fence where if somebody has a medical waiver because they twisted their ankle, like you're mad at them for not having to run the 1.5 miles.
But I'm not.
But it sounds like you are. Why else would you hold up this? Like, I get, like, you're trying to make this clean division, but there doesn't need to be one. Like, there is policies that people can take advantage of, and that is their right. Like, why are we punishing them for it?
Okay. I get what you're saying. All right, we need to do some bad technology.
Oh, gosh, Ben.
Josh, I understand that your work forced you to make a change you were not ready to make.
Okay, so our work is making some changes to the technology that we use to do our day-to-day job, okay? I have been issued a work laptop. I was issued that back when COVID started, and that's where I do my work on. But we're changing the software and, like, the processes and things. And so one of the things that the boss lady decided, yay verily, with the support of her IT guy that she pays, is that we're going to go ahead and upgrade everybody to Windows 11. Might as well. It's coming down the pipes. That's just bite the bullet and get it done. This is my first experience with Windows 11. And Ben, for the
Would
most
you say
part,
that you're having some cultural resistance to the change?
Don't you start with me. Don't you dare use my words against me. No, I have no cultural problems with Windows 11. In fact, there are several features in Windows 11 that I very much appreciate. For example, the snapping feature. There is a feature where if you're dragging in Windows 10,
yes.
If you drag your window all the way to the top of the screen, it maximizes to the left. It goes to the left side of the screen. To the right, it goes to the right side of the screen, which is wonderful. Huge fan. Windows 11 takes that to the next step, and if you're dragging around, it detects, hey, it looks like you're trying to snap this window to a certain configuration, and it gives you options that are non-standard. And like some of those options are...
like if you have one of those big ultra-wide monitors, that could be really useful.
Man, I am an ultra-wide convert, Ben. Like I was dual and triple monitor for the longest time, but I'll tell you right now, listeners, listen to me. Ultra-wide is the future. Just go get an ultra-wide. It is such a quality of life improvement, you have no idea.
All right, listeners, listen to me. Josh convinced me to get an ultra-wide monitor. I didn't like it, went back.
Did you get rid of your ultra-wide?
It's in a box in the closet.
Ben! Oh, I'm sad now.
There's other reasons, but we don't need to talk about this.
All right, we're tacking this on to the end of our bad technology. I want the full story on your ultra-wide experience. Anyway, there is one feature, one thing that Windows 11 changed that I cannot tolerate, and it makes me mad.
Did they move your cheese, Josh?
Ben, they moved my cheese. In Windows 10, there is an option where if you have multiple windows of the same application open, for example, if you have multiple Excel spreadsheets open at the same time, they will group together and it will show as one icon on the taskbar with a little number that says 2. And it says, oh, you have 2 Excel windows open.
Right.
Okay. There's an option where you never group stuff together. And I always check that option because I'm constantly switching back and forth between the 2 spreadsheets that I have open, okay?
Right, and you just want them both to have a little button on the taskbar.
I want them to have separate buttons so I can quickly identify the separate windows that I have open.
I don't know if I've told you this before, Josh, but every computer I've ever owned since the taskbar existed, I've checked that same option. Do not. I think it was in like Windows 7 or 8. They made it so that by default it automatically combines like Windows into a single button on the taskbar, and I've always unchecked that option.
Yes.
So when I migrated to Windows 11, I immediately went to do that, as I do every time I get on a new computer, uncheck the always combine Windows option, and it didn't exist in Windows 11.
And it still doesn't. And this is what drives me nuts. Like, at first I thought, oh, well, this is going to be annoying. This is one of those things that I actually undersold as how much it was going to impact my day-to-day life. I hate this feature so much, it is hard to articulate.
Yeah.
My normal workflow, the way that I work, I have at least 3 browser windows open that are separate on separate screens because I gotta reference 2 of them simultaneously.
Did you see if there's an... okay, keep ranting. Go ahead.
And there's also multiple spreadsheets. Like I have at least bare minimum 2 programs with multiple tabs open simultaneously all the time. And the extra 3 seconds that it takes every single time I switch to a new tab
to
go to a task. Yeah, it adds up. I'm losing minutes out of my day.
Okay, I want to go back to the year 2000. So in the year 2000, I took a job as a subcontractor working for Microsoft Corporation supporting their personal products. In this case, it was Microsoft Office. And I went through their internal training as they transitioned from Word, Microsoft Word, back when it had version numbers associated with it, to then when it became Word XP and Word 2000, 2002. And I trained through each of these, and I was there when they made the transition to inserting the ribbon at the top, where they went, instead of it being menus with drop and drag and find all your options, to being the ribbon at the top. And if there was ever a time of moving people's cheese, that was it.
Oh man, I was mad at the ribbon for a full calendar year before I finally accepted that.
Yeah, and that's part of what they want you to do, is just realize that, yeah, the old way of doing this, while familiar, is a little bit inefficient. This is a better way. It's going to take some adjustment, but once you adjust, you'll never want to go back.
I don't believe that either, because there is still stuff. Like the other day, I was trying to change a specific character spacing thing on a Word document, and it took me like 3 minutes. I had to Google, hey, where is the freaking character spacing? Because, it's on the ribbon in this box, but you got to click this little tiny button to get the advanced menu. Like, I still don't know where to get some of that stuff.
So that's what I want to cover next, and that was when they showed all this to us, they're like, we've added this new interface, but underneath, all of the features are still there. And that's a design philosophy, I think, that Microsoft does with these iterative software products.
Yes, you can add new stuff. As long as you still have access to the old stuff, then everything is forgiven.
Right. So even for one of the versions, you could just like check a box and it would just appear the old way. You could just pretend it didn't happen. But eventually they made it the default and you couldn't turn it off. However, there's always a way. There's always a way to do the old thing. So I was as surprised as you were that Windows 11 doesn't have an option to tell it not to combine the windows on the taskbar.
Yes, and I started Googling because I thought exactly the same thing you do. Oh, well, there's no way that this is not an option that exists in the system. And the Google rabbit hole.
What did you find out?
Oh my gosh, Ben! I found a bunch of third-party softwares. Microsoft created an entire software industry for people that want specific features of Windows 10 to come back to Windows 11.
Really?
Yes, there are multiple paid programs.
So you've got to buy and pay for a program in order to basically force Windows to act the old way?
That's one way. Another way, when Windows 11 first came out, is you could go and you could insert a registry value manually, which, listeners, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you don't want to know. We're talking about the bowels.
This is talking like reprogramming the brain of your computer.
We're talking about going down to the sub-basement of Windows where the people are shoveling coal into the burners. Like, this is not something that you want to do as an average user.
That's a good metaphor.
And so I did that. I tried that. Like, this worked when it first came out. It might not work now, but I'm still going to try it. I inserted the registry value, and Ben, the nightmare of cascading errors that created, I immediately undid that.
You broke it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not only did it break, it didn't fix the thing that I wanted it to fix.
Yeah. So it's not an option. I wonder why. Like sometimes with these, you can understand what they were getting at. You're not going to get the internal developer notes that say we're making this change for these architectural software reasons. But you might be able to see, okay, they're trying to transform to the ribbon because it puts the most commonly used features right at the top, right in your face, and it makes them easier to get to.
So Windows 11, like as I'm doing this research to try to undo this, I'm learning about the history of Windows 11 when it first came out. When it first came out, the start menu and all the buttons and the icons were in the dead center of the taskbar, in the center of the screen, and there was no option to move it all to the left or turn off the extra icons. Then that right there, like they had to add it later due to user feedback. So someday, maybe, hopefully, guys like you and me will get through to Microsoft and they'll ungroup these taskbar icons again. But the fact that they put everything in the middle by default and didn't have an option to move it screams to me that they're trying to be Apple. That they're trying to copy their direct competition's operating system.
Okay. I have not yet had to grapple with this to the level that you have. I am doing this right now on a computer that I have upgraded to Windows 11, which is why I knew all of this. But when I work on my personal computer, I'm just not using it to that level where I do. It annoys me. And it's like you said, it's 3 seconds every time that I didn't have to spend, and it adds up. But for my work computer, because the government's slow at adopting new technologies, we're still on Windows 10, and I can still use it the old way. So I haven't really grappled with it like you have.
I'm actually shocked that you're on 10 instead of 7. Like I was fully prepared for you to say Windows XP and be fine with it.
Yeah, the government has had to get real about the fact that like you can't just be slow about adopting new technologies because the vendor will abandon it and not support it and not release patches for it. And now you're just left flapping in the breeze when, the adversary fill in the blank releases some new virus or exploit that makes your system vulnerable.
Okay, so this is a complete tangent, but there is a trend on TikTok right now where this guy goes, "What can you give a 40-minute presentation on with zero notice?" And then it cuts, and then the person who's doing the TikTok inserts whatever they could give a 40-minute presentation.
Okay, I like it.
So this one, like you just stumbled on something that I could talk 40 minutes about with zero prompting, and that is
vulnerability management.
Software development in the military.
Oh, yeah.
I went to an entire week-long conference one time talking about how we develop software for the government and how screwed up the whole process is, and how there was one program that was hanging on by its fingernails to try to standardize and fix this whole process. But it was doomed to failure because whenever they were asked to justify their budget, their response was, "We're going to give you exactly the same thing that you have now, but better." And that was the only explanation they had.
Okay, I don't know if you know this, but the Air Force decided they were going to try to fix this problem by creating a corporate executive level position to fix this problem. They hired a chief software architect, and they picked somebody who was a known industry professional.
Wasn't this the guy that quit and wrote the world's most scathing resignation letter?
Yes. His name was Nicholas Chillian, and he was hired by the Air Force to come solve all these problems with software development in the Air Force. And he, after I think 2 or 3 years of this, he threw up his hands, dropped the mic, and quit.
When an executive level person, like your whole job is to do this one thing, and he quits 2 years later because like you gave me one job and you made it completely impossible for me to do it.
That's exactly what his resignation said.
That's very telling.
Link in the show notes. All right, so you'd asked about the widescreen monitor thing. So here was my mistake. Instead of shopping for the best widescreen monitor to make the transition and getting one, what I actually did is I picked one off Wish.com.
Ooh, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a difference.
And it was a reconditioned one, and it was one of those that had one of these really wily, like hard to diagnose problems. So somebody had gotten the monitor. I won't say the brand; it doesn't really matter. But it'll power on and work perfectly, and in an unpredictable, unreliable fashion, occasionally it will just randomly power down and power back up.
Okay.
And it might go a full day without doing it, and it might do it 15 times in a row.
Yeah,
I can
that's
detect
kind of a
no
deal
pattern.
I can see that like completely spoiling my experience with it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I stuck it in a box and put it away.
Okay, here's my question for you. Is that a 1080p monitor or is that a 1440p monitor?
I think it was 1440.
Okay, so
it was really wide.
I want this on the record for people that are interested now by the fact that I'm talking about ultra-wide as the future. I have 2 ultra-wide monitors in my house, one on my wife's workstation, one on mine, okay? The first one that I bought was mine, and it was a 1080p monitor. And it was fine. It worked just great. Then I bought a second one that was a 1440, and I did the thing behind her back. I moved the 1080 onto her workstation, and I put the 1440 on mine. And Ben, let me tell you, like, there is a real significant difference. Like, I cannot recommend 1080p.
Explain for our less tech savvy listeners what those numbers mean.
Okay, so look at whatever screen that you're looking at, whether it's your phone, whether it's your computer monitor, whether it's your TV. There is an aspect ratio. There is a height and then there's a width. What I am talking about is the number of pixels that make up the height. So a 1080p monitor means that there are 1080 pixels from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
And so the higher the number, the more pixels, the better the resolution, the more stuff you can fit on the screen.
That's interesting because we used to talk about both every time. Now we just do the one dimension.
Now we just do the one dimension, which is important when you're talking about ultra wides, because 1080 is perfectly fine for like gaming, for like graphics. But here's the thing: because the ultra wide, the width, we're not talking about the width. 1080 is 1080 is 1080. It doesn't matter how wide the monitor is. Like 1080 becomes really restrictive when you have a super wide monitor as far as how much you can put on the screen. Like all the text is just slightly bigger enough that it makes it difficult to get more stuff.
So 1440 is what, 40% bigger in the vertical dimension.
In the vertical, but because the vertical is still like the 2 monitors I have are the same size, right? They're both 34 inches from corner to corner.
Right.
But the 1440 has 40% more pixels in the vertical component that is the same size as the other one. And so the horizontal, it's more than 40% more pixels. And so there is a noticeable increase in screen real estate with the 1440 model versus the 1080.
All right, so sum it up.
Sum it up is, if you're going to get an ultra-wide monitor, which I highly recommend, it needs to be at least 1440, if not 4K. Which is like, when I say 4K, that actually doesn't talk about the vertical anymore. Like the 4K is like 2800 or something. Like I don't know the actual vertical number, but like 1440 or higher. Just go to the store. I want an ultra-wide monitor, 1440 or higher. You'll be fine. Okay.
Good advice. Good way to make it simple. While we're being bad at things, Josh, let's do some bad at parenting.
Oh, and that's me again. Here I am bad at parenting. Okay, so we have a 31 Flavors, Baskin Robbins, in our neighborhood, okay? And we go there on occasion to celebrate specific things. And so we went there the last time was when my son played his last game for his flag football season. And he caught a couple passes, and he got 3 positive yards, and it was great, and he had a good time. We just wanted to put a bow on the whole experience. So we went to Baskin Robbins. My son decides while we're standing there that he wants a banana split because he's never had an old school banana split. He's always gotten just a cone or something.
Why? Had you seen it on a show or something?
Well, I always
I saw my dad order those when I was a kid. Is that why?
I used to get those when I was a kid from Dairy Queen whenever my dad would take me. And then I switched. I start now whenever I go to Dairy Queen, I get banana split blizzards. I don't know if this is advertised, but it's on the secret menu at Dairy Queen. You can get a banana split blizzard, and it's a banana split in every bite, and it's the best experience I have with desserts. Cannot recommend highly enough.
I've never tried one, but I will next time I see a Dairy Queen. There aren't any near me.
So my son always hears me ordering banana split blizzards at Dairy Queen. He's like, what is that? I'm like, well, it's banana split in every bite. What's a banana split? Well, a banana split is a scoop of chocolate, a scoop of vanilla, a scoop of strawberry.
Yeah. We need to pause on this moment. That is a good philosophical food question.
Don't you start with me
split?
What is isn't a sandwich?
What is a pizza?
Don't, because we disagree on so many of these in ways that make me want to hurt you.
What is a banana split?
What is a banana split? Okay, and so this is the thing. We're at Baskin Robbins, and he wants a banana split. And then the lady asks him, what ice cream flavors do you want for your 3 scoops on your banana split?
No.
Well, my son looks at me.
This is a crisis.
My son looks at me, and I looked at her, and I said, scoop of chocolate, scoop of vanilla, and a scoop of strawberry. Because that's a banana split. And then my son goes, can I get a different scoop? I said, as long as it's chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry, yes. And he's like, well, what if I want the praline? Like, this is all happening after.
Right. What if I want a raspberry sorbet?
Yeah, exactly. That's what that. And I told him flat out, no, I will not allow you to get anything but the 3 flavors.
You can't say you've tried a banana split if you put some other kind of ice cream on there.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a banana split anymore. And that's what I was trying to explain to him. Like, if it's not one of the big 3 flavors. This is another tangent. Have you ever heard?
No.
Have you ever heard of a show called Kids Next Door?
No.
Okay, it's a really stupid little kids cartoon show that my kids are watching that I watched long back in the day, but they have this concept of ice cream that I love to death, and it is the 3 flavors, and they put it up like they have a temple to the 3 flavors, and it's vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. Everything else is a subdivision, is a lower tier of ice cream than the 3 flavors.
Right. Okay, good. Yes, like that. So a banana split is, in its purest form, is one each of the big 3 on top of some bananas. What toppings go on top?
You see, and that's the next question she asked him. It's like, what toppings do you want? And my son, trying to do his due diligence, says, what toppings do you have? And this poor girl goes, we have, and then rattled off like the 15 different toppings that they have.
Yeah.
And then he just like after
then it's just a sundae.
Well, then he listened to everything that she said. And then he turned his head and looked right at me. Ben, what did I tell her to put on his banana split?
Okay, so hot fudge, caramel sauce, whipped cream, nuts, and a cherry.
That's it. That's everything that I told her to put on.
So I knew this. It's a sliced banana, a scoop each of vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry, hot fudge, caramel sauce, whipped cream, nuts, and a cherry.
That's it. That is
a banana split.
Yes, exactly. And so then that led into this philosophical discussion that we had for the remainder of the evening. What is and is not a banana split? And so my daughter at one point asked, what if I wanted a banana split with 2 scoops of strawberry and 1 scoop of vanilla? And I said, that is perfectly acceptable. You are within the boundaries of ice cream flavors.
Okay, this is a perfect time for me to tell you this little story. So I saw this video, link in the show notes, of this British cooking show where they brought on this guest Italian chef, and he was everything you imagine in an Italian chef.
Doing the hand gestures and things.
Yes, yeah. About like certain kinds of pasta can only have certain sauce on them and all that kind of stuff. And they just finished making this beautiful cheese sauce and mixing it with this pasta. And then the daytime talk show host of some asinine British daytime talk show was like, oh, well, if I just cut up some ham in this and put it in there, it'd be like a dish my mom made when I was a kid. And this Italian chef looks at her aghast that she would suggest putting ham in this beautiful dish that he just spent an hour making. And he looks at her and he says, if my grandmother had wheels, maybe we could ride her like a bicycle.
I think I've seen that clip. Just the amount of affront and audacity that this guy felt by having somebody suggest a change to his recipe.
Yeah, and the fact that whatever that Baskin-Robbins employee was even asking your son these questions show they don't understand what a banana split is. Like, a banana split isn't subdividable. It's a thing. If you do something else, it's just a sundae.
Well, and that's... is that a generational thing? Because this was like a high school kid working at Baskin-Robbins as their first job. And like, I'm not going to lean over and be like, give him a banana split and like expect her to know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that way when I go to a restaurant and they're trying to sell me like, hey, this is a Philly cheesesteak. You're like, okay, but can you give it to me without the cheese on it and put some lettuce and tomato and mayo on there? Like, then it's not a Philly cheesesteak anymore. Like, just...
Sir, you're ordering a BLT. Like, I'm going to give you a minute and I'm going to come back. And if you try to do that again, I'm going to kick you out of the restaurant.
That was a 30 Rock quote. Good one. So I think really at the heart of this is the idea that we have certain foods that are a combination of things that still have an ideal form. And maybe there's a little bit of deviation you could do. Like maybe you could put strawberry sauce instead of caramel sauce or something like that. But you still need to stick close enough to the ideal thing or you can't call it that.
So my kids could come to me and tell me that they were homosexual and I'd be 100% fine with it, still love them. My kids could come to me and say that they were adopting religious beliefs that I completely disagree with, but I would still love and support them. But if they came to me and said that I got a banana split with pistachio raisin ice cream, I would kick them out of my house.
Yeah, that's just not a banana split. It really isn't. Okay, I am with you. I'm in outrage. What did he end up ordering?
Exactly what I said. because like he looked
Pistachio raisin ice cream?
No, good Lord, no. Like he was threatening that, or he's asking that later. Like, could I have gotten like a pistachio like ice cream? Like, and I told him in the car, no, because that's not a banana split. A banana split is exactly what we've discussed in this podcast already.
What are some other things that are like this? Like a Big Mac. A Big Mac is a Big Mac. Like you don't change the ingredients. If you order a Big Mac without pickles, then it's already something else.
My wife does this thing with salads sometimes where we'll go to a restaurant and they have like a salad on the menu and she's afraid to deviate too far because she doesn't want any kind of like heavy like dairy on her salads. So it's like definitely no cheese. But then she also doesn't want the eggs, but she's uncomfortable asking them to remove too many things from this salad because it's like she's not ordering that thing anymore. She's ordering a custom made salad for herself.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we definitely have those things that we know what they are. Like if you order a Reuben, it's a list of like 7 ingredients and they never change.
Yeah, if you order a Reuben, but can you substitute the sauerkraut for coleslaw and then put like Italian instead of Russian
Thousand
dressing
Island?
on? Yeah. Like no, because then you're not ordering
then
a
it's
Reuben.
not a Reuben anymore.
You're ordering some abomination of a sandwich that shouldn't exist.
All right, listeners, what other food concoctions are there that are immutable, that cannot be changed, or they are no longer that thing?
A banana split is chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, and you can fight me on that one.
All right. So another bad at parenting moment, I think, is we need to talk about birthday parties. So last night, my wife and I were out kind of we were killing some time between a couple of things we need to do. And I said, hey, they built this new thing over here. It was kind of like a knockoff Dave & Buster's. And we went there and they had like birthday party rooms. And her and I were kind of discussing what it'd be like, because we were never the kind of family that would go to a big place where you'd pay $600 an hour to rent a room and bring everybody in and give them tickets and stuff like that. So we were talking about, I don't know, what the industrification of birthdays.
Yeah, that's a thing. Like how you have young kids where you probably still have kids that they want to have birthday parties with their friends. Like you're still
but we kind of defy the industry's attempts to turn this into a thing. Like if we go to the skating palace for a birthday party, instead of paying them extra to rent out their room, we'll just like bring our cake in and eat it on the tables in the corner.
Okay. Do you never ask these places that you get so that's the standard. Do you have like birthday parties like at your house, or do you usually go out?
Yeah,
and do them?
our birthday parties are usually at home.
Okay. So yeah, I just got back today, as a matter of fact, from one of these industrial birthdays. They have so many birthday places, and for some reason they're all trampoline parks. I don't know if that's a thing. Like, I don't remember trampoline parks existing when I was a kid.
We didn't talk about trampoline parks in relation to playgrounds, but it's like the next level is, instead of it letting be a free place where anyone can go to, now it's a place that we own and you have to pay us to get into.
Yeah.
Medium danger.
Yeah. Medium danger trampoline parks. Well, and here's the thing. I remember this when my kids were a little bit younger. Trampoline parks were just that. They were just like a big room with a bunch of trampolines. Maybe some of them were at angles. But they've evolved, Ben. I don't know if you've been to a bunch of little kid birthday parties in the last several years, but like 3 years ago, I know this. Like we rented out one of those rooms for a trampoline park birthday, and it was just trampolines. That was it. It was just trampolines, and the kids jumped, and it was a great time, and they had a blast, and that was the end of it. Fast forward to today, which can't be longer than 3 or 4 years post-COVID, and we went to this place called Urban Air Park. They're not sponsors. They should be. Like, Urban Air, sponsored podcast. Ben, I walked into this place and I have never seen, we are approaching pure birthday place. Like, we had a separate room just for our party.
Was there like a throne? Was there like a photo op place?
There was not a photo op.
Birthday kid sits here and holds the crown and the scepter, and you can take his picture and it says, "It's my birthday."
I know you're being facetious, but birthday kid did have a crown. We had a separate room, and there was one of a dozen rooms that were there for birthdays with a clear schedule written on a whiteboard in the wall. Like you're in the hospital. It's like your birthday coordinator is in a first name. This is your jump time. This is your play time. This is when pizza will be served. This is when you will open the presents. This is when you will be served ice cream. And this is when you will leave. And like all clearly just laid out for all of us, the parents, to control this thing. But
wow,
this trampoline park had like an area of just trampolines. They had a dedicated dodgeball court. They had indoor zip lines across the ceiling where children, this is one part that I didn't particularly like, children were on zip lines flying on the ceiling above where all the food was being eaten. I don't know if you've seen a child lately, but stuff comes off of them. They had underneath, like below the zip line, but above the eating area still was a ropes course where you could, like, they were wearing full body harnesses attached to like an I-beam in the ceiling, and they could like walk amongst pedestals up in the air above their parents. They had an indoor go-kart track that was multi-leveled, they would go up a hill and over another part of the track and then back down, and there was eating areas between in the circles. There was a laser tag area off in one corner where you could go.
Yeah, that's what this place I'm talking about was like.
It was everything that you could imagine all rolled up into one place, and you had 3 hours to just go absolutely nuts and then get out.
Yeah, because if they spend all that money to make that place, they want you to come in and have your fun, but then they want you to go so that it's available now for the next party.
Yes, and I mean, like I said, it feels like it's approaching pure birthday.
Did your kids have fun?
I only brought the one. I brought my son. I was the person that was invited to said birthday. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, he had a blast.
Okay. You came away, no one was injured, he had a great time.
No, yeah. I mean, he had fine. He had a good time. There was two downsides to this whole thing, Ben. The first one was that the wristbands that the kids received were good for all day. That's not necessarily the downside. That's actually really nice of the place to do. They could have stayed there and kept playing. Okay. The downside was they told the kid when they gave it to him. It's like, oh, and this wristband is good for all day, so you can stay as long as you want. And I'm like, hey, knock that off. He's not in charge of how long he gets to stay here.
I like that idea. I like that should be secret information to only the parents are party to. And then you can make the decision.
Yeah, that's because this is exactly what happened. The birthday, like the official part was over. We were kicked out of the room, and now we're just kind of all on our own. And I was like, hey, buddy, we're going to go. And he holds up his wrist and he goes,
But they told me I could stay all day.
But this is good for all day. And what's my response as a parent? Well, I hate you, and I hate the idea of fun, so get in a car. My response was, well, dude, I've got stuff to do, so I'll let you play for another 30 minutes, and then we've got to go, okay?
That's a good parent-child compromise. You're a good daddy, Josh. This isn't bad at parenting.
Well, and
all right.
This is the second thing that I was going to talk about, is I'm not a birthday guy, Ben. I'm not. I
know.
There's so many other parents there that, like, yeah, if I was a more outgoing person, like, I could sit down and, like, do the small talk thing and get to know them and maybe even make friends. But I'm not that person. I literally found a table that was off in a hard-to-get-to area, and I sat down and I played Magic Arena on my phone for like 45 minutes.
Yeah. Is there always going to be something like this? I mean, it doesn't have to be a birthday. It could be something, just proxy fill in the blank. Our society is going to create situations where you have to intermingle and make small talk with strangers.
Well, but this is the thing. Like, if I want friends now, as an adult with children, if I want friends, those are the people that are the likely suspects. Friendship is built off of shared experience, and it's built off of mutual understanding of the universe and proximity, and the fact that, we are forced into these situations together. If I'm going to keep seeing these same people at these birthday parties, it makes sense to get to know at least a couple of them more than in passing, just so, like, when we are forced into close confines like this, then I have somebody that I can, like, hang out with. But I don't know. I saw something recently that talked about, like, making friends as an adult. Like, when you're a kid, you're forced into a classroom in school and you make friends because of the forced proximity. And so it comes naturally because you're shoved in a box. Eventually you'll get to know the people that you're in the same box with. And so that gives you this false idea in your head that making friends should be natural and that it should just happen. And you're an adult and you don't have any friends and you don't know why. Well, it's because it's not a natural thing. You have to go out of your way to make friends out in the wild. And I don't want to.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I've found myself explicitly saying to my children, particularly the ones that kind of went through the COVID quarantine, now they're back and it's just starkly obvious to them. We've moved to a different state. They're in a new school. They don't have any friends. And be like, you need to think of this like dating. Like, you have to pick someone that you have a friend crush on. You need to ask them on a friend date, and you have to do friend activities. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah. But for, like, adults, like, I barely knew how to date as a kid. Like, how am I supposed to date now?
Yeah. Well, you sparked an idea in my head that I think I'd like to talk about before, and that's kind of how in the last couple of decades the social interactions have transformed from maybe what they might have been traditionally a generation or two ago. Like maybe you interacted more with your neighbors or other things. So we'll talk about that in the future.
We should put that on the list because I'll tell you right now, the fact that I have a smartphone makes it clear to everyone that was there I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Josh, it's time for Bad at Logic. We have come to the end of our critical thinking cards that we've got. We might dust them off at some point again in the future, but for now we're going to transition to a new idea. So to send this 48 cards that we've done over the past so many episodes off in style, on this odd episode of the Bad at Magic podcast, you are going to give us your top 3 biases. Next time I'll give us our top 3 fallacies, at which time we will transition to our new concept to be revealed probably in the new year.
Once we're done, we'll put the decks of cards onto boats, and we will push them off into a lake, and we will light them on fire so they can be sent to Valhalla as warriors. But yes, I have picked my top 3 biases, and there's no reason behind why they're my top 3. I just like these the most, and I'm going to talk about them very, very quickly. The first one I did was reactance. You'd rather do the opposite of what someone is trying to make you do. This is a logical bias, and I suffer from this immensely. Have you ever been like doing one thing and then somebody tells you to do something else? And you know in your mind that like that's on your list and that's something that you have to do. But the fact that that person told me to do it makes you want to not do it.
So I want to get to the heart of what I think we're doing here on the Bad at Magic podcast when we do this Bad at Logic segment. And that is thinking about these things help me be aware of it when it happens. So when I feel the reactance bias, I can at least be aware of it enough to make a conscious decision about if I want to do that or not.
Yes, and I will tell you that like since then I have noticed that like especially in like a professional environment. Hey, are you going to take care of this? If if it's not the thing that I'm doing right now, then I identify that yes, this is something I still need to do. I'm just not doing it at this moment. I will tell the person exactly that. Like, yes, that is on my list. I'm going to get that done. I'm just not doing it right now. Like you might be my boss, but like as long as I get my work done,
I'm not gonna because you told me to.
Yeah. That happens in around the house at home. Like me and my wife have a saying, like, stop telling me to do things I'm already doing.
Yeah.
Your wife ever be like standing up? It's like, hey, are you gonna like start the laundry or something? And then like you look at him like, literally, that's what I was standing up.
What does it look like I'm doing?
How dare you tell me to go do the thing that I was going to do? Yeah, we had to stop that.
Yeah, but being aware of this bias allows you to overcome it.
Yes, exactly. And so be cognizant of it. The next one that I'm talking about is declinism. You remember the past as better than it was and expect the future to be worse than evidence suggests it will be. Ben, I think anybody that's listened to this podcast more than 3 episodes knows that I probably suffer from declinism.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably true.
Less about the fact that I think the past was better and more that I think the future is just going to be a garbage fire. But like you have introduced me to concepts and ideas, and I have read some books that you have recommended, and I do believe that while it might seem bleak, that's because of my limited scope. Humanity has only ever tracked upwards, and the future can only get better.
All right.
If I just keep telling myself that, maybe one day I'll believe it. All right, and the last bias, I love this one because this is a bias that you suffer from that I'm constantly trying to break down, and that is the just world hypothesis. Your preference for a just world makes you presume that it exists. Ben, we live in a cold and uncaring universe that has nothing but entropy and death in store for us, and I need you to embrace that if we're going to continue to be friends.
Yeah, I could see how that's a bias some people suffer from.
The most diplomatic way of telling me to shove it. Good job.
All right, I got a quick bad at English for us today, Josh. This is just a curious one that I heard that the British have a word for it that we don't really use. And that is, let's say if you're ordering a drink at a restaurant, like let's say you go, in America, there's usually like Coke establishments and Pepsi establishments, and never the twain shall meet, except for in rare cases. But if you go to, let's say you just want a cola with your dinner, you would say, I'd like a Coke. What's the assumption? Probably that it's going to be the sugared version as opposed to the diet version.
Are there restaurants that when you ask for a soda, they give you the diet or the sugar-free version? Those institutions need to be burned to the ground. What's the matter with them?
I think that's the case. Here's the phrase the British use. When they want the regular Coke instead of Diet Coke, they call it full fat.
I like that. I want the full fat everything all the time. This is clear why it's not a phrase in America, because the default is we want the full fat unless we say otherwise.
Yeah, I guess so. You're right. The default is the sugared version, and then you ask for the sugar-free version by exception. And here, I think it's the opposite, where they were ordering a Coke. They say, I'd like it full fat, please.
So in Europe, do they ask you, like, oh, I want a Coke? Do they take the extra step to be like, would you like the regular Coke or the Diet Coke? And this is just a preemption of that question, saying I want the full fat Coke? Because in America, if you want anything other than full fat, it's on you, the person ordering, to specify at the time of ordering. There is no follow-up questions.
I don't know if that's universal, and I don't know how regional that is. One of our European listeners, if you'd like to go on the subreddit and answer that question, that's a question both of us have for you. Is there an assumed default, and do you have to specify, or will it generate a follow-up question?
What a diet-shaming practice that would be. If, like, you're in a restaurant like, oh, can I get a Coke, please? Would you like the sugar-free or the diet or the full fat?
And yet I've been asked that exact question. It sounds odd to our ear in America, it sounds like they're shaming you, but over there it's just become so normal to say, I'd like the full fat Coke, please. It just yeah.
Oh yeah, like, look at me, obviously I want the full fat lady.
All right, Josh, because it's the month of December, we're coming up on the end of the year. We're going through the things that culturally that we do. So for our main segment today, we're going to talk about something that is a kind of a clash of the past and the future meeting. And that is, on our digital devices, we consume intellectual property, and they're gathering data about us all the time. We talk about this a lot on the Bad at Magic podcast. But now they're starting to be more open about the fact that they're gathering that data because they realize that it can help them. So it helps us feel more favorably disposed towards their platforms, and potentially helps us share their platforms with other people that aren't currently using it. So now, in this instance, we're just going to talk about music. Music streaming providers like Apple Music, like YouTube Music, like Spotify, other ones like that. They aggregate the data of everything you've listened to, and at the end of the year, they present it to you on a silver platter. They call it Recap or Replay or Spotify Wrapped, and they say, look at all the things you've been listening to this year. Don't you want to share that with your friends?
Yeah, and I did. It's funny because you messaged me about this, and I'm like, I told you, like, I haven't gotten anything like that. That sounds stupid. And then the next day, YouTube Music delivered me like, hey, here's your top 100 songs that you listened to in 2022. Isn't that interesting? I'm like, how dare they collect my data? Actually, this is a really good playlist.
Okay, great. So we're going to talk about it. So I found this great article on ZDNet by an author named Sabrina Ortiz, and I'll read a quote from what she said. She said, as you tapped through your Instagram stories last week, you were probably bombarded with screenshots of other people's Spotify Wrapped or Apple Music Replay. Sharing our music interests with others isn't something new. People have been sharing music taste forever, from blending vinyl records to burning mixtapes, or as I would say, copying mixtapes onto cassettes, onto building playlists. The music we listen to is an expression of who we are. By sharing those interests with others, you share an integral part of your identity. But describing our music taste to others can be challenging because the details are as complex as we are. Most of the time, one genre, artist, or album won't be enough to accurately represent our full listening experience to others. So as we look at what you and I got in our recap list from whatever platform we got them from, what would you... That's what I want to look at is, do we feel like this accurately describes us or says something about us? And if it doesn't, why not? And if it does, what is it?
What's really interesting is I've always thought of myself, and I've always expressed myself as somebody that has a very eclectic taste in music, because I have a broad range of artists that I will listen to, a broad range of genres that I will listen to regularly and consistently. And yet, YouTube Music has the audacity to point out that of the top 5 songs that I've played all year, 3 of them are from Imagine Dragons.
All right. Well,
So
you like
literally
Utah rock bands.
I had a feeling that I liked Imagine Dragons, but YouTube has just confirmed it. Like, clearly, my favorite artist is Imagine Dragons.
I like the emotion you're describing right now. It's like, I think there's something mysterious about me, but it's actually kind of obvious. And I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
Well, that's the thing, is these are the difference between like data and feelings. And Ben, I'm a hardcore data guy. Like, in a professional environment, I am constantly harping on, we have got to have metrics.
So these data collection are determining things about us, and they might be right or they might be wrong. So as I was looking at my recap, they divided it into spring, summer, and fall, and then a full year one. And I kind of looked at the playlist that it made for the full year, and there was a few really obvious problems with it. Not to mention the fact that I have not homogenized my music streaming platforms in my life. So I have my Amazon Alexa Echo device in my kitchen, and it sometimes will default to other music streaming services than the one I primarily use, which is YouTube Music, because I pay for YouTube Premium, which includes YouTube Music, so that becomes my default streaming platform.
We actually paid for Spotify for the longest time, but then I signed up for YouTube Premium because I watched so much YouTube, and then YouTube Music came with it, and then we canceled Spotify, and now we have YouTube Music.
Right. So, but I occasionally end up in Spotify for whatever reason, because it's default or it can find a song or whatever. And so
I will say the Spotify user-generated playlists are way better than any of the random playlists that YouTube Music is going to serve to.
Yeah, they're not there yet. What happens is there's certain times in my life where I might be listening to music in the kitchen, which is always going to be Amazon Echo, or in my car, which is always going to be YouTube Music, or some other place which could potentially be some other platform. And those tend to be related to each other, as in the circumstances under which I'd be doing. Like, for instance, the kind of songs I'm going to listen to in my car will be different than the ones I'd listen to in the kitchen.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. You're doing different things in those places.
Right. And so if that platform thinks that represents me, it's getting a slice of my life that's not understanding the difference in those contexts.
So because Amazon only lives in your kitchen, it's getting disproportionate. It's not seeing the whole picture.
Exactly.
It's that composition division thing again.
Yes. So that's what I want to talk about, because, for instance, as you know, one of the things I do is I teach seminary, and part of my seminary that I do in the morning, every morning from 6 to 7 a.m. with the high school kids, is we'll listen to a little bit of music. And of course, it's going to be Christian-themed music. But really, that's the only time in my day I'm listening to Christian-themed music. But when YouTube Music gave me this playlist, it intermixed these Christian music songs, because I listen to them almost daily, in my regular playlist. So if I just start this playlist and start listening to it, it'll be like a regular rock song, and then like a church song, and then back and forth. And it's not a good playlist.
It's almost like you want the AI to go one level deeper. It's like, don't just look at how much I'm listening to this music. I want you to look at the days and the times that I'm listening to this music and make some kind of quantitative analysis based on that.
Yes, and I think that's possible, but we're not there yet.
Or Google just hasn't implemented it in YouTube Music yet.
Like, I only listen to those church songs on weekdays in between the hours of 6 and 7 a.m. If I'm in my car at 5 p.m., I don't want to hear one of those songs from 6 to 7.
Well, and and they can track that, because if they give you one of those songs in your random feed any other time of the day and you immediately skip it, that should like feed back into the algorithm.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And I feel like if we aren't there yet, we're close and we're getting there. And maybe certain platforms are better than others are at it.
I've started doing that with the algorithm. I'm trying to train it with my music preferences, and YouTube Music specifically gives you not only a like button, but a dislike button. And so there are songs that I'll actively skip, and then there are also songs that I will actively dislike because I don't want to hear this again.
Okay, I try to do that as well, but I know that tends to focus on the peaky spots. Like, ooh, I really, really love this song, or I really, really hate the song, and that's when I'll stop what I'm doing to give it the feedback. But the ones that fall in the middle, I don't do it either way.
That makes sense. We almost need like some kind of way of giving feedback on like 1 to 10 instantly to the system of how we feel about this song.
Yeah, and I'll be provoked out of stopping what I'm doing and giving it feedback if it's really high one way or the other. But when it's in the middle, I don't tend to give feedback.
Yeah, if you're doing something.
So the Spotify one, I didn't use Spotify much during the year, but it gave me not just the list of songs, but also like hey, you might like playlists. So I looked at the playlist it gave me, and as much as I like to think I have eclectic music taste, these are like right in the middle of the road. The ones it gave me are 90s pop rock, 80s pop rock, pub anthems, classic road trip songs, power pop, and have a great day. Like, these are like a karaoke song list.
It sounds like the cotton candy of music. It's just Ben skipping through life, whistling with birds landed on his shoulders to join in.
Yeah, that's all it was. Just and almost exclusively rock. I thought I listened to other genres, but at least as far as Spotify is concerned, whenever I listen to them, that's all I'm listening to.
That's funny. Mine, so like I said, like numbers 2, 3, and 4 of my yearly recap are all Imagine Dragons. Like,
okay, what was number 1?
Okay, number 1.
I love that you took a deep breath inside, because I have a lot of entries like that on my list, and I want to talk about what those say about us. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's the thing: is I know why this song is number 1, and yeah, it deserves its spot there. But this is a song that I liked so much that I would put on loop. Like, you can loop just one song, and I would listen to it for hours on end while I was doing monotonous accounting work throughout the year.
Okay.
I'm a little ashamed of it. It's a song called Pop Stars, and it's by a band called KDA, which is a K-pop band that was created and put together and promoted by Riot Games specifically for League of Legends. Like this, whenever this band puts out a music video, it is CGI characters from the video game that they develop singing their songs. And like it's just K-pop nonsense, but I like this song so much, and I've seen the music video that they made of it so many times that when I'm listening to it in my car, my daughter and I both do the little dance moves that they do in the music video.
Awesome. I love the connection that makes. All right, link in the show notes to that one. Well, cool. That's a good one. So I was looking at my list, and one of my number 2 song, for the same reason as yours, was listed real highly, and it was Cascading by Ammon Rich, who's my son. It's the music you'll hear at the end of this show.
And you just have that playing on loop for when you're working.
I just played it so many times that it had registered enough data entries that it moved its way to the top of my list.
Nice.
Yeah. So, you kind of have in your mind that these lists ideally would be a reflection of you and, like you said, be just a good playlist for what you do in your life. But I think they also, and doing this annually, recognizes that you transform over time. And maybe there's a bit of an overarching theme to you, but also things will change from time to time. Like, for instance, 2 of my favorite artists both came out with new albums this year, and amongst my playlist were songs, all the songs from those albums by those artists.
Okay.
So Avril Lavigne came out with a new album called Love Sucks, which so 1, 2, 7 of my top 20 songs were all from that album. And then Weezer came out with a new album called Van Weezer, and 4 of those songs were in my top 20.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize I was co-hosting with a 17-year-old girl.
Avril's 36, man.
I didn't say anything about Avril Lavigne. I said something about the people that listen to Avril Lavigne.
Oh, okay. Well, but wouldn't that be weird, though, if you could be an artist and continually grow up, and instead of your audience aging with you, you could always manage to just draw in new listeners that were always the same age? That seems like that would be way weirder.
I'm not equipped to have that discussion about art because I'm not an artsy enough person to talk about the evolution of, 1, the artist, 2, their art, and 3, the people that consume that art.
Yeah.
Like, does Avril Lavigne pick up new listeners, or is it just the people that liked Avril Lavigne back in the day just still listening to Avril Lavigne?
I think that there's both kinds of artists in the music industry. The ones that only got their audience a long time ago, and even if they want to try to produce new music, their audience resists. Like, you go to a concert, you go to an Eagles concert, you don't want to hear some new song they come up with. You want to hear Hotel California.
But also, in the same token, when you go to an Eagles concert, that's a specific demographic of people that are showing up to an Eagles concert.
But
the bell curve is going to be dead centered on the same people that were listening to the Eagles 20 years ago.
But I think a band like Weezer or Green Day that came out while I was in high school are still picking up new listeners today.
You think? But are they listening to their new stuff? Or are they listening to like the classics that keep getting replayed on the radio? Because you can't not play classic Green Day songs.
You're right. I'm not prepared to talk about this. Like, I don't actually know, if a new fan is just likes the old stuff or they'll listen to the new albums too.
Listeners, a lesser podcast host and co-host would just start speculating about random nonsense, whatever they feel like. Ben and I are so dedicated to facts and data that we have not read enough studies about this specific thing. We're not prepared to talk about it.
So another one that shows up on my top list is a pop artist that I came to, and I can figure out the trail of this, and that is in the movie about the a cappella singers. Pitch Perfect. In the movie Pitch Perfect, they made a second and a third movie, which were nowhere near as good as the first one. But in those, they introduce a bunch of new artists, and one of them is a French singer named Mika. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, he had a song on there that I love listening to. It's called Elle me dit, and it's all in French. And Elle me dit means she tells me, and the song is brilliant. It's he's talking about the women in his life kind of tearing him down. Like, it's his mom telling him, why don't you make something out of your life? It's his girlfriend telling him, why don't you, improve yourself and do better things and stuff. And it's a great, catchy song. I love it. And also what I love about singing in French is that everything rhymes.
Oh, okay.
So I've found myself, because of this, listening to other French pop songs. But he's been a popular enough artist that he's crossed over and created a few hits in English only, like Grace Kelly, which went viral on TikTok not long ago with people like Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds doing that duet of singing the chorus of Grace Kelly.
Oh, very interesting.
The one, I can be brown, I can be blue, I can be violet sky. That's
everybody knows that one.
Yeah, that's Mika. So he also kind of popped up on my list this year. And then he wrote one that was like a reimagining of the song Popular from the musical Wicked, called Popular Song with Ariana Grande, which is a great song that was on my list this year. So, what about you? What are some of your others?
Okay, so I have a handful of outliers, and one that I will bring up specifically. So like most everything in here is just like one flavor of pop or another, straining into like alternative rock. That's my happy place. I want pop and I want alternative rock.
Okay.
So we've got a lot of stuff from like Linkin Park, which I thought was my favorite band, but no, apparently it's Imagine Dragons, because as I'm scrolling, there's a lot of Imagine Dragons here. A couple of outliers that are interesting is I have a handful of songs from specific like animated or Disney movies that I would watch with my kids, and then like I really like that song.
So this is getting at what I was saying. Like, if you could have it be intelligent enough to create separate playlists, would it know, oh, this is the playlist Josh listens to when he's in the car by himself, as opposed to these are the songs Josh listens to when he's in the car with his kids?
Maybe. Like, there are different things that I would be doing that I would want the program to be smart enough to identify. Or I could tell it, hey, I'm doing this thing. Feed me the music for that.
Okay.
Are we talking about...
I definitely wish I could tell my device that my wife is in the car.
hey, keep it PG. None of this... well, actually, you mentioned that. One of the songs that I like that is on here, that's in my top 25. Oh, I didn't know it was that high. It's a song by will.i.am, and it's a song called Big and Chunky from like Madagascar 3 or 4 or something.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've ever heard this song. But
it was on a children's movie?
It was on a children's movie, but it was in the background of like one scene. But I liked it so much that I found that he did a whole song, and it's called Big and Chunky. And you can imagine what that's about. It's will.i.am singing for 3 minutes and 22 seconds about how he likes bigger
girls
women
that are big and chunky.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a good song, and it's funny, and it's catchy, but that's like... It's one of those things, like if you're singing that out loud and your wife walks in the room, she's going to look at you funny and you're going to have to answer some difficult questions.
Yeah. Sometimes songs do that. They almost transcend their subject matter. Like, for instance, Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, which is on my playlist this year.
Okay.
It's a real catchy song. Tonight we're going to have it. You know the song.
Yeah.
But it's just about being a sex machine. He even uses the word sex machine in the song. But it's like, my daughter and I counted once. It's 21 different metaphors like a rocket ship, like a bomb about to explode, like a car
Ben.
racing its engine.
Oh, Ben, are you just discovering that all of human music is about a man and a woman being together intimately?
No, I'm not. But they used to listen to this song in my children's elementary school every day as like their get going song. But it's really just about a dude trying to get laid. But it's okay because for kids, that's not what it's about.
Yeah, as a metaphor. Like, that's the thing, is the metaphors are thick enough. You don't get them until you're old enough to understand the metaphor. And before that, I mean, it's just a thing that he says in a song that's great.
Yeah.
All right, here is the one outlier that I wanted to bring up because this is so unique. It's in the top 20 of my all-time listened songs, Ben. And it's Lights by Ellie Goulding. Have you ever heard that song? It doesn't matter if you've heard the song or not.
Maybe.
Here's the thing about this song is that I skip it every time I hear it. This song comes into my feed, and like if I consciously register what this song is, I will skip it like, oh, I've heard this song a billion times, I'm done with it, and I skip it, but it's still in the top 20 played songs. How is that possible?
Okay, so you're saying that's an anomaly, like as in a problem with the algorithm, not just an anomaly like you don't know why it's on there.
Well, and this is the thing. Like, it's in the top 20, and I believe the data. So what is wrong with my brain?
Let's go down the conspiracy rabbit trail for a minute. Is it possible that some record-producing company is paying the streaming provider to feed that into your feed?
I don't know.
Like it's getting promoted?
I honestly thought this was more of a problem with me and my brain, and that I said to you out loud that like every time I hear this song, I skip it. But clearly, if it's in my top 20, like every time I consciously register that I'm listening to the song, must be only 1 in 5 times that it actually gets played.
Okay.
The rest of the time, I must just be bobbing along and singing to the lyrics of this song without realizing it?
Maybe. Okay, so you're saying that you think this is all dumb and there was no humans involved and it just happened. But I'm saying potentially now I'm the one suggesting a conspiracy theory.
It's malicious. Like YouTube Music is forcing Ellie Goulding down my throat against my will.
Maybe. All right, I had a few like that. I love Dua Lipa, guilty pleasure there. Just enjoy listening to her songs. But I have lots of like early 2000s, late 90s kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Bare Naked Ladies, I'm always listening to them. Third Eye Blind, they're big three I've got. Don't Stop Me Now wasn't the only Queen song on my list. I got Under Pressure, classic all time.
Under Pressure.
That's the one. Sugar Ray, I've got Southern California beach pop. I got Every Morning and Someday. Now, Josh, I have to stop for a second and tell you I'm very self-conscious about the fact that at least 2 of our listeners I know are professional DJs.
Oh, okay. Should we be like not telling them what we listen to in fear of losing their respect?
They're judging me. I just know it. Like, you know who you are, my friends that are professional DJs. I'm sorry for my terrible music tastes.
No, you're not. But this is the thing. You're not allowed. This is the long tail. This is what the internet has given us. Is no longer are we slaves to 104.7 K-pop or whatever. Like, now we can go and find the music that we like. This is why my number 2, 3, and 4 on my list are Imagine Dragons, one of the top, like, I don't know if that's alt or pop, like, bands in the country at this moment. Yeah. But my number 1 song is a random K-pop group from band. South Korea that's funded by a video game company.
What a beautiful example of the long tail, which we've talked about on here before.
Exactly.
About how the demand for things that aren't the big thing is more in aggregate than the demands for the most popular things.
I'm going to make a TikTok of me doing that stupid K-pop dance with my daughter. And it's going to go viral. I'm going to do it.
I have a K-pop band in mind. Mine is BTS singing Dynamite.
I've never heard of either. I'll have to look that up.
Stars yeah, I've got Good Charlotte. I've got Hanson singing MMMBop. Not only do I have Hanson singing MMMBop in my list, but I have a funk band called Scary Pockets doing an interpretation of MMMBop that is fan-freaking-tastic.
I like this song so much. I like the parody versions of this song. All right, I have one song in my list that's really weird. All right, so from the second Lego movie, during the closing credits, they got Beck to play a song called Super Cool. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, And this was all right. So I like this song for so many reasons.
Yes,
One,
you're talking about the Lego Movie credit song. Yeah, that's fantastic.
and it's called Super Cool because like those are the lyrics. Like the chorus is like super cool, fantastic, unbelievable. It's like there's all these words.
We love to sing that song in the car, me and my kids.
Oh, but I love the song for so many reasons. One, it's just really catchy and really well done. Two, it has the Lonely Island coming in on random bridges to rap about really stupid things about credits in movies, which I love, breaking the fourth wall. And three, I love the audacity of a movie production studio that is so, I don't know, tone deaf or whatever, but they put a song during the end credits of a movie with the words that they want you to say as you are walking out of the theater and other people are listening to you.
Okay, read some of the lyrics from that song.
Okay. It's so here it is. Unbelievable, super cool, outrageous, and amazing. Phenomenal, fantastic, so incredible. Woohoo! And then it repeats. Like, That's exactly what movie studios want you saying as you're walking out of the theater.
And we totally did. And if you asked me how I felt about that movie, I'd be like, it was amazing. It was wonderful. It was super cool. It was fantastic. And I wouldn't even realize I was doing that. A+, well done, super good marketing.
Also, side note, at Legoland, the first time we were there, they played that on the PA loudspeaker in like the whole park, like every 20 minutes. And
you got to get sick of that.
Oh man, no, never. Every time
as an employee.
I was an employee probably. As me, the guy that's there, sang it every time. Top of my lungs, dancing, waiting in line.
All right, what are some others we got in here? I've got, so I had some weird ones. I got John Denver. One of the things I like to do in my car with my kids is kind of give them a musical education. Oh. Try to think of songs that I liked when I was a kid that maybe they haven't heard before and listen to them together and enjoy that. So that could be a whole playlist for me. Like the musical education of my children.
That's my wife's job because last weekend, where was I? I was at dance or something with my daughter, and my son with my wife requested to watch the Sound of Music, like the old school Sound of Music movie. And so my wife is constantly introducing our kids to quote unquote like the classics.
So I'm going to rattle off some of the ones if I was making that playlist that would be on there. I've got Better Than Ezra, Good, Blues Traveler, Run Around, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Hey-O, Billy Joel, We Didn't Start the Fire.
Ooh.
Have you Deep Blue Something, Breakfast at Tiffany's?
Well, that's a good one.
Counting Crows, Mr. Jones.
I mean,
Eve 6, Inside Out. Those are like the ones I was listening to expose my kids to music from when I was a kid.
My wife and I do the same thing, but not intentionally. Not because, I want to expose you to the things I like. It's more because we're in the car and I want to listen to the things I like. And they're just like victims of it. But this is a phenomenon that that is still, it blows my mind and floors me every time that it happens. And that is whenever we turn on the live radio, which is rare, super rare that we actually listen to the radio. But then a song will come on that I have never heard in my life. And my 8-year-old daughter in the back seat starts singing every lyric. And every single time I go, how have you ever even been exposed to this song?
Yeah.
Does
she know?
8. Apparently. So she has an Echo Dot in her room. And unbeknownst to me, whenever she's in there by herself, she just tells it to play her music. And Amazon, doing the dumb algorithm thing it does, just feeds her top 40, apparently. And so she knows every song. There's a really, really awful song. Like, we're talking about, like, metaphor.
Raunchy, you mean?
Yeah, we're talking about metaphor and innuendo. There's one that is, like, super thin innuendo. I don't know the name of the song, but it's you've heard it on TikTok, like "Mommy don't know Daddy's getting hot at the body shop." Like, just it's talking about Dad going to a strip club behind Mom's back, and your daughter knows every word of it. And
oh no,
I know this is not something that I'm prepared for.
Okay, well, what we're getting at here is the data aggregation of our lives. And I think you and I both have this in common is I don't just resent it. I like it if someone has come up with a clever way to add value to my life, to make me feel when I try to listen to music. It's low overhead. It's the songs that I like. Maybe it introduces me to a little bit something I knew, or takes me back to the things that I know that I like. And so, but I feel like there's still some development that needs to be made. So Alexa, if you're listening,
they are.
I want you to understand that I only listen to certain kinds of music at certain times of the day and in the presence of certain people. So if you could learn everyone's voices and pay attention to what time of the day it is, here are my playlists. I need Alone in the Car Happy. I need Alone in the Car Sad. I need Running and Didn't Feel Like Listening to a Podcast or an audiobook. I need In the Car with Just My Kids but Not My Wife. I need In the Car with my kids and maybe other people's kids as well. I need one specifically for if my wife is in the car with me, and regardless of whoever else is there. And then I need a seminary playlist that's just for my high school kids I'm teaching church. Those are my playlists. Get to work, Alexa.
I can get behind this. And so whenever people complain about like, oh, they're stealing your data, guys, this is the positive side of that. Yes, they are stealing your data, but this is what you're getting from it. Like, you're getting like tailored custom offerings, like curated music and content. And if I was to say which playlist that I need in my life, I'm going to say I need a work playlist. I need songs that I know so well that I could sing them without devoting any of my CPU power to them. So I can focus on what I'm doing but still enjoy the music.
Yes.
I need a study playlist, which my brain is 100% engaged, and I need like zero. I just want like almost acapella, not even acapella, but like orchestral music to that.
Okay.
But right now when I study, I turn on lo-fi hip hop beats, and there's no words. It's just soothing, calm, focus music. I need a workout/run playlist.
Something peppy, energetic.
Oh, no. This is where you and I differ, I think.
All right. What is your running workout playlist?
Oh, man, I want like that hardcore Norwegian, like hard rock, heavy metal, the stuff that goes right to your bones.
You didn't have anything like that in your YouTube music playlist, did you?
Because I don't get to do that anymore. All right, so tangent. There is a video game called, it's not in my playlist, but there's a video game that came out called BPM, Bullets Per Minute. And it's a rhythm game, but it's a first-person shooter. And the entire soundtrack is Norwegian, like, dark heavy metal. No words, just this heavy metal music. And, Ben, I listened to that entire, like, soundtrack multiple times this year while I was working. Because I don't know, the driving, like, bass line and the heavy beat, it was awesome. That's what I want when I'm working out.
All right.
I want a playlist for when I'm happy and I'm standing. Because if I'm standing, I'm free to move and dance and get the hips involved.
Your phone should be able to figure that out.
If I'm standing up and doing things, yeah. If I'm like cooking dinner, I want a different set of happy music than if I'm sitting down doing something. Because like if you're sitting down at a desk and you get like a dance music, you get like a dance song, and you can't respond to it, that's just, I mean, I don't know. It's distracting almost. But if you're standing doing something, you can move a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And then the opposite. I need a song for when I'm angry and I'm sitting down. I just need to vent some frustration, or like I hate the universe, but I'm sitting in constraint and I can't move a lot, and I just want to like get that stuff out. I think a lot of that's going to be Linkin Park.
Okay. All right. So I have a takeaway from this to kind of sum it all up. Corporate data aggregators and software developers, if you're listening to the Bad and Magic podcast, which we assume that you are, Josh would like your playlist to be cognizant of whether or not he's sitting or standing or running. And I would like yours to be cognizant of the other people around me at the time that they're on. So get to work on that.
Man, I feel like that's got to be 80% of the things you think about when you're listening to music.
What, the other people around me?
No, the two things there. Sitting, standing, or moving, and then who's standing in my vicinity. Who else can hear what I'm listening to?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny when you say, here's your playlist, here's the music you listen to this year. That's way overly simplistic. Like, if you could divide that up into Venn diagram where this is what I listen to when I'm by myself in the car versus this is what I listen to when I'm in the kitchen with the kids. Way different lists.
Here is the song that I put on when I was driving home, and here is the song that I played nonstop on loop for 15 straight hours. Those are two different things.
Yeah, and I don't want to listen to that 15 straight hour song the other times.
Necessarily, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, That was really interesting. Listeners, we want to hear about yours. So, if I can, I'll try to share mine, but it's got some religious songs on it, so don't just listen to it. But you get the idea. You can see what's on my list. I definitely didn't say them all. Josh, are you going to be ready to talk about Andor the next time that we podcast?
All right, so based on all of the feedback that I'm receiving from every possible angle, like I'm being bombarded on every side with people telling me you must watch Andor. It's amazing. Like
I'd like to say I was first and strongest, but I also laid off when you got the message.
Yes, yeah, you were first and strongest and the most persistent, but I'm not unaware of all of the other things that are telling me to consume Andor. And so I'm making a committed effort to watch more Andor, and currently we are 6 episodes in.
Okay. All right, you're halfway there.
I'm making a concerted effort to consume Andor, and I'm not disappointed so far. So next episode I will commit to being ready to talk about Andor in its entirety.
Okay, great. So that will be our feature. We'll have a blowout dissection and analysis of Star Wars Andor on the Bad at Magic podcast.
Oh, that'll be our Christmas
spoilers
episode
for Star Wars. That will be our Christmas. What a Christmas present, listeners! Also, it's time for us to undertake another book. So if you're looking for a Christmas gift for your Bad at Magic podcast listener, we are going to undertake Warbreaker. 2009 book by Brandon Sanderson. We'll probably do that the first or second podcast in the new year. So if you want to read along, pick up Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson.
It was my turn. I got to pick a fantasy novel. I picked my favorite author, which is Brandon Sanderson. And this is a one-off book. It's not part of a trilogy or a long-running series. And it has what I think is a very unique and interesting magic system, and really a lot of subplots and themes that hit on that anybody can relate to, of like belonging and what is my purpose, and having like the rug ripped out from underneath you, like you had expectations and then they were completely upended. It's a really good book. I recommend it.
Okay. I'm on board. Sounds like fun. So, we'll set that aside for a feature discussion probably on the 12th of January. If you want to read along so that it doesn't get spoiled, read the book and we'll be prepared to discuss it then. And if you heard anything that we talked about today and you want to join in on the discussion, you can go to our Facebook page, take a look at the photo album, share your ideas and thoughts, or you can go to our subreddit and links in the show notes, and you can join in anonymously, give us your ideas, give us your feedback, tell us about your music playlists or your food that you like to eat that's full fat, and we'll join in the discussion with you. We love to hear what you have to say.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. It is incredible the amount of visibility we can get from that, and thank you if you already have. Lastly, if you want to listen to me and Ben talk about how just date ourselves by talking about the music we listen to from now until the end of time, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page, and thank you to all of you who already have.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.